Relax and have fun. It's early. We're back. Felt like we had to do something kind of jazz handy since it's been 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, guys, so it's been 2 weeks since we've made our last video, and if you are interested in what we're doing, we will tell you. If you're not, then jump to this timestamp for the content of the video. We went on a huge road trip. We've been planning it for a long time. We wanted to show our kids this big, beautiful country, and we went to the Pacific Northwest to visit some of our friends, and it was so fun, and it was great to just take a break, to travel a little bit. And why don't you tell them some of our highlights?
We came across a beautiful hot spring in Nevada that was like in the middle of nowhere. The redwoods were amazing. When we were at the ocean for a few days, we got to play in some tide pools and try surfing, try bodyboarding. The boys got to see starfish, crabs, mussels, this like cool cave in a rock when the tide was low. It was all a blast. We had so much fun.
Yeah, the boys loved it, but when the time came, we were excited to get back home so we could get going on some of the many projects we want to do here on Copper Desert Homestead. So today we're working on a project with our mesquite trees. As you may have noticed, our land is actually covered in mesquite trees, which are really amazing plants. And I'm going to take you down to the river to tell you why, and then we're going to come back up here and show you the project we're working on to really encourage these mesquite trees to grow. So here we go. All right, here we are down by the river. We're about 50 feet from the river right now, and as you can see, the mesquite shrubs up at our place have the potential to grow into mesquite trees. They really thrive down here with the extra water. One, because it's closer under the earth, so their taproots can absorb a lot more water, but also there is some flood irrigation that happens annually with the monsoon season, which we are in right now, which is very exciting to see that it does rain around here. So these are native plants to the Southwest, but really to just arid desert climates all over the world. We call these pioneering plants, but we also call them nurse plants, and I will explain why. Pioneering plants are essentially plants that thrive in their natural climate without any extra inputs from us. They have everything that they need from the sun and from the soil and from whatever water is available to them. And now they're called nurse plants because they are so helpful to the environment and the plants around them. They have very deep taproots, which bring water and nutrients up to the plants surrounding them. Every fall, their leaves drop, which creates a mulch on the ground, which helps retain moisture for other plants. And of course, they have wide canopies, so they provide shade for plants that aren't as well adapted to direct desert sun. That said, as helpful as they are to the environment and the plants around them, they have also been very helpful historically to the native peoples in the Southwest. So they have really interesting medicinal as well as food uses. We can talk first about their sap. Their sap can be used as a dye. It can be used as a glue, and it can be used on a cut or a scrape as a mild antiseptic, which is really neat. The leaves themselves are also edible. You can chew it into a poultice and then use it, for example, for some mild gum pain. You can also brew it into a tea that's good for digestive issues. And last but definitely not least are the pods. So here's a mesquite tree bean pod. There are three varieties of mesquite trees: the velvet, the Texas honey, and the corkscrew. No, the screw bean, I believe it's called. I'll double check on that one. But they're all edible. So what you really seek out is actually the pod itself, not the bean inside. And it's ready to harvest once these are a complete sort of a cream color, and they'll be very brittle. As you can see, this one's still bendy and a little green, so this isn't quite harvest ready. But once it is harvest ready, you can literally just chew it and it'll taste sort of sweet. You just want to watch out for the beans because they are very hard. You can also ground it up or mill it into a flour. So traditionally, these flours are used for tortillas or tamales or little mesquite cakes.
If you wanted to use it in a type of baking where you need bread to rise, you would just have to mix it with some regular flour, but you would still get the benefit of, one, the added protein, because these are about 30% protein, but also the flavor, which is naturally sweet and described as earthy and chocolatey. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and probably should have mentioned earlier, that because they are a leguminous tree, they are nitrogen fixing plants. So they take the nitrogen from the air and fix it into the ground, which is really vital for their growth and for the plants around them. So those are some of the reasons I'm so excited to have these on our land. Let's go back up to Jag, where he's going to show you what we are building and how we are terraforming the ground around them to help grow our shrubs into trees as well. So here we go.
So what we've built here are some Berman basins, or also called Boomerang berms. We got the idea from Brad Lancaster's book, Rainwater Harvesting. So what these do is, around a plant you want to encourage, that's usually on a pretty gradual slope, you dig a basin, and all the earth you dig from that basin then becomes a berm in the shape of a boomerang on the downslope side of that plant. If you wouldn't have built this, all the rain that falls on this land would have saturated into the soil, and then once the soil is saturated enough, the rest of the water would just sheet flow down the slope. Digging this basin allows for more catchment, and it also allows for catchment of any sheet flow coming from upslope of the plant. This basin will allow for more water to soak in, feeding the plant more. And one other thing we're going to do is, in the fall or winter, we're going to do what's called a chop and drop on all the lower portions of these mesquite plants, because we want to encourage them to grow to trees. So we'll be cutting off the lower stuff and using my wood chipper to mulch all that chop and drop stuff and fill it in the basins. It'll supply nutrients and help with any evaporation. We've also planned an overflow for every basin. So if so much rain comes that the basin can't hold enough water and there will be some overflow, we've planned for one side of the basin to be a little lower than the other, and on that low side the water will run out of the basin and actually flow to the next one. And we've also just raked rocks to kind of encourage the path either to the next basin or away from any of our structures.
So that's it, guys. Boomerang berms, or berms and basins around our mesquite tree, is what's going to help our mesquite trees to not only grow, but to thrive on our desert homestead. We'll see you next week.